The Bridge That Calls. Deep in the forests of West Virginia, USA, there is a place locals refuse to talk about after sunset. It's an old iron bridge called Black Hollow Bridge. During the day, it looks ordinary: rusted rails, creaking metal beams, and a narrow road crossing a silent river. But at night, the bridge becomes something else. People say if you stop your car on the center of the bridge at exactly 2:13 a.m., turn off the engine, and listen closely, you will hear footsteps walking toward you. But when you look, no one is there. Most people laugh at the story. Until they try it. Ethan Carter had just moved to the small town of Ravens Creek, a quiet community surrounded by endless forests and winding mountain roads. To Ethan, the town felt slow and boring compared to the city he had left behind. His father had taken a job as a park ranger, and now Ethan found himself stuck in a place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets seemed to hide in every corner. One night at school, Ethan overheard a group of students talking in the hallway. "Have you ever been to Black Hollow Bridge?" one of them asked. Another boy shook his head quickly. "My cousin tried it last year," he said quietly. He heard the footsteps. "And?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. The boy hesitated. "He doesn't go near the forest anymore." That answer made Ethan curious instead of scared. Ghost stories had always fascinated him. Later that evening, Ethan searched online for Black Hollow Bridge. The results were strange. There were a few blurry photos, a handful of old forum posts, and several warnings from locals telling people not to visit after dark. But one comment stood out. The footsteps belonged to someone who never crossed the bridge. Ethan leaned back in his chair. That made no sense. And it made him want to go even more. 2 nights later, Ethan borrowed his father's truck and drove toward the forest. The road leading to the bridge was narrow and twisting. Tall trees blocked most of the moonlight, leaving the road almost completely dark. His headlights cut through the darkness as the forest seemed to close in around him. Then he saw it. Black Hollow Bridge. The iron structure stretched across a black river below. Rust covered the metal beams, and the wooden planks creaked slightly as the wind moved through them. Ethan checked the time. 2:11 a.m. Perfect. He drove slowly onto the bridge until he reached the center. The river below looked like liquid shadow. Ethan turned off the engine. The truck lights faded, and suddenly the world became completely silent. No wind. No insects. No sound at all. Ethan glanced at the clock. 2:13 a.m. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, clang. A metallic sound echoed somewhere behind the truck. Ethan sat upright. Another sound followed. Step. It sounded like a foot landing on metal. Ethan slowly turned his head toward the rear window. Nothing. The bridge behind him was empty. Then it happened again. Step. Closer this time. The sound echoed through the bridge, like someone walking slowly toward the truck. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. This had to be a prank. Someone must be hiding on the bridge. But when he looked again, there was still no one there. The footsteps continued. Step, step, step. Each one closer than the last. The metal beams began to vibrate softly with every step. Ethan suddenly noticed something strange. The truck door handle moved slightly, as if someone outside had touched it. He held his breath. Another step, right beside the truck now. The footsteps stopped. For several seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then something slowly appeared in the truck's side mirror. At first it looked like smoke. Then it formed into a dark human shape standing beside the truck. A figure. Tall. Completely black. And its head slowly turned toward Ethan. In the reflection, he saw its face. But it had no eyes. No mouth. Just darkness. Ethan panicked and turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. The moment the headlights turned on, the figure vanished. Ethan slammed the gas pedal and sped off the bridge. He didn't stop driving until he reached the town. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. And he kept replaying one terrifying thought. Something had been walking toward him on that bridge. Something that shouldn't exist. But the worst part? When Ethan checked the truck the next morning, he found wet footprints on the passenger side door. footprints that looked like they had been left by someone standing in the river below. And they led directly to the door handle. The thing that followed. Ethan tried to convince himself it was nothing. Just a trick of the light. A shadow. His imagination playing games with him in the middle of the night. But the footprints on the truck door the next morning ruined that explanation. They were still there. Dark, wet marks shaped like bare, human feet. The strange thing was the size. They looked almost too long and thin to belong to a normal person. And they stopped at the door handle. Like someone had tried to get inside. Ethan wiped them off quickly before his father could see them, but the image stayed burned into his mind. All day at school, he couldn't focus. The memory of the faceless figure in the side mirror kept replaying in his head. That night, Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet. His parents had gone to sleep hours ago. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees around the house. Everything seemed normal. Until he heard it. Step. Ethan's eyes snapped open. He sat up in bed. The sound had come from outside his bedroom window. He held his breath. A few seconds passed. Silence. Then, step. Slow. Heavy. Like someone walking on wet ground. Ethan slowly turned his head toward the window. The curtains moved slightly in the wind. But something else moved too. A shadow. Tall. Standing just outside the glass. Ethan's heart began pounding. He told himself not to look. But curiosity pulled his eyes toward the window. Very slowly, he pulled the curtain aside. The yard outside was dark, lit only by pale moonlight. For a moment, there was nothing there. Then he saw it. Standing near the edge of the trees. The same tall black figure from the bridge. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there. Watching the house. Ethan quickly shut the curtain and stepped back. That's impossible, he whispered to himself. Black Hollow Bridge was miles away. There was no way something from the bridge could follow him home. Right? He grabbed his phone and opened the internet again, searching for anything about the bridge. This time, he found an old article buried deep in a local newspaper archive. The headline read, "Tragedy at Black Hollow Bridge, 1983. Ethan leaned closer to the screen and started reading. 40 years ago, a man named Daniel Cross had driven his car onto the bridge late at night. Witnesses later reported hearing screams and seeing someone running along the bridge before the car crashed through the guardrail and fell into the river. Daniel's body was never recovered. But that wasn't the strange part. According to the article, several people in the town had reported seeing a dark figure walking on the bridge at night in the years after the accident. The reports were always the same. Footsteps, metal clanging, and a shadow walking slowly toward anyone who stopped there. Ethan swallowed hard. But the final line in the article made his blood run cold. Some witnesses claim the figure does not remain on the bridge forever. It sometimes follows those who disturb it. Ethan slowly lowered his phone. A cold feeling crawled up his spine. Outside the window. Step. The sound was closer now. He forced himself to look through the curtain again. The figure had moved. It was no longer by the trees. It was now standing in the middle of the yard, closer to the house. Ethan backed away from the window. His breathing became shallow. Another step. Step. Now it was standing directly beneath his window. Ethan could hear something dripping. Water. Like someone had just climbed out of the river. The doorknob of his bedroom slowly rattled. Once. Twice. Ethan froze. His bedroom door was locked. But the handle kept moving. Something was trying to open it. Then the footsteps began again. But this time they weren't outside. They were inside the house. Step. 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 Walking slowly down the hallway. Coming toward his room. The dripping sound followed each step. Water hitting the wooden floor. Ethan's heart pounded so loudly he thought it might give him away. The footsteps stopped right outside his door. Silence filled the room. Then came a slow, scraping sound across the door, like fingers dragging along the wood. Ethan stared at the handle. It began to turn, very slowly. Even though the door was locked, the wood creaked under pressure as something pushed against it from the other side. And then Ethan heard a voice. Low, wet, barely human. From the hallway. It whispered only 3 words. You stopped the bridge. The river never let go. The voice outside Ethan's door was barely human.
Wet.
Broken. Like someone speaking through water. You stopped the bridge. Ethan's entire body froze. The doorknob twisted harder. The door shook under the pressure from the other side. Then suddenly, silence. The handle stopped moving. The footsteps were gone. Ethan stood there for nearly a full minute, too scared to breathe. Finally, he slowly backed away from the door and grabbed his phone. He knew one thing now. Whatever was in the hallway was the same thing from Black Hollow Bridge. And it had followed him home. The next morning, Ethan rushed to the town library before school. Ravens Creek was small, but the building held decades of local records. If the spirit belonged to the bridge, the town had to know more. He searched through old newspapers, accident reports, and town records until he found a thick file labeled Black Hollow Incidents. His stomach tightened. Inside were dozens of reports spanning nearly 40 years. Most were short witness statements. Heard footsteps behind my car. Saw a man-shaped shadow on the bridge. Something knocked on my truck door. But one report was longer. It came from a retired sheriff named Walter Hayes, written in 1991. Ethan read carefully. The sheriff had investigated several strange encounters at the bridge after Daniel Cross disappeared in 1983. But during the investigation, the sheriff discovered something disturbing. Daniel Cross wasn't just a victim. He had been running from something. According to police reports from that night, witnesses said Daniel had stopped his car in the middle of the bridge and gotten out. Moments later, they heard him screaming. But not in fear. In panic. Like he was trying to escape. And then he ran. Straight through the bridge railing. Into the river below. But the sheriff wrote something even stranger. When investigators examined the bridge that night, they found wet footprints walking toward Daniel's car. Footprints that started from the riverbank and ended at the driver's door. Exactly like the ones Ethan had seen on the truck. Ethan slowly closed the file. The spirit wasn't guarding the bridge. It was trapped there. And anyone who stopped on the bridge woke it up. That night, Ethan made a decision. He couldn't keep living like this. If the spirit followed people who stopped on the bridge, then maybe the only way to end it was to go back. Back to Black Hollow Bridge. At 2:13 a.m., the forest road was even darker than before. Fog rolled across the ground, covering the pavement like a blanket. Ethan's headlights barely cut through it. Soon the iron structure appeared again. Black Hollow Bridge. Waiting. Ethan drove slowly onto it. The same creaking metal echoed under the tires. He stopped at the center. The river below looked darker than the night sky. His heart pounded as he turned off the engine. Silence. He checked the time. 2:13 a.m. And just like before,
Clang.
metal echoed behind the truck. Then,
Step.
the sound of a bare foot hitting the iron bridge. Ethan kept his eyes forward. The footsteps moved closer.
Step. Step. Step.
The air grew colder. Water dripped somewhere behind him. Finally, the footsteps stopped beside the driver's door. Ethan slowly turned his head. Standing outside the truck was the same tall shadow. But this time he could see more. The figure looked like a man soaked in river water. His body twisted unnaturally. His face still had no features. Just darkness. Ethan forced himself to speak. "You're Daniel Cross, aren't you?" The shadow twitched. The bridge groaned softly. Ethan continued. "You're stuck here because you never crossed the bridge." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the figure slowly lifted one arm and pointed toward the river. Suddenly Ethan understood. Daniel hadn't been trying to escape the bridge. He had been trying to escape whatever came from the river. The real horror wasn't Daniel. It was what had pulled him down. The water below the bridge began to ripple. Slow circles spread across the surface. Then Ethan heard something else. More footsteps. But not on the bridge. From the river. Something beneath the water was moving. Something big. The shadow of Daniel began shaking violently. Like he was trying to warn Ethan. The river exploded upward. A massive dark shape surged toward the surface. Long arms. Twisted fingers. and dozens of hollow faces staring from the water. The real thing haunting the bridge. The thing that had taken Daniel. The thing that waited beneath the river for anyone who stopped. Ethan slammed the truck into gear. The engine roared to life. The headlights flashed across the bridge. In that moment he saw something terrifying. Daniel's shadow wasn't attacking him. It was holding the thing back. The shadow stood between the truck and the river, like a guard, protecting him. Ethan hit the gas and sped off the bridge. Behind him, the river roared violently. Then silence returned to the forest. The next morning, Ethan returned to the bridge one last time. Sunlight poured through the trees. The river looked calm again. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No shadows. No whispers. But near the center of the bridge, Ethan saw something lying on the metal floor. A small rusted car key. Probably Daniel Cross's key from 1983. Ethan picked it up and gently tossed it into the river. The water swallowed it quietly. For a moment, a ripple spread across the surface. Then everything became still. Some people say Black Hollow Bridge is finally quiet now. No more footsteps. No more shadows. But sometimes, late at night, drivers claim they see something standing on the bridge. A dark figure, watching the river, waiting, guarding the crossing, making sure nothing else comes out of the water again. Something crossed the bridge. For 3 weeks, Ravens Creek was quiet. No footsteps. No shadows. No stories about Black Hollow Bridge. Ethan tried to convince himself everything was finally over. School returned to normal. His father went back to long shifts as a park ranger, and the strange nights slowly faded into distant memories. But deep down, Ethan still felt uneasy. Because the last thing he saw that night wasn't just the creature in the river. It was something else. Something behind it. Something far deeper in the water. Late one evening, Ethan's father came home unusually late from work. His face looked pale. "Something strange happened tonight," he said while setting his keys on the table. Ethan looked up.
What?
There was an accident near Black Hollow Bridge. Ethan's stomach tightened. What kind of accident? His father hesitated. A car was found on the bridge around midnight. That happens sometimes, Ethan said carefully. But his father shook his head. This one was different. He leaned forward. The car was empty. Ethan's chest tightened. "What do you mean empty?" "No driver," his father said quietly. "No passengers. The doors were open and the engine was still running." Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Did anyone see anything?" His father nodded slowly. "A truck driver passed by about 10 minutes earlier. He said he saw someone standing on the bridge." Ethan swallowed. "A shadow?" "No," his father said. He looked Ethan straight in the eyes. He said it looked like a person walking off the bridge. That night Ethan couldn't sleep. The memory of the river monster returned to his mind. But something about the story felt wrong. If the creature was trapped in the river, then what had the truck driver seen walking off the bridge? At 2:13 a.m., Ethan heard something outside again. But it wasn't footsteps. It was something worse. A car door slamming shut. Ethan slowly walked to the window. The street outside was empty. But something caught his attention near the end of the road. A figure standing beneath a streetlight. Not a shadow. Not a spirit. A person. Soaked in water. Standing completely still. Ethan squinted to see its face. Then the figure slowly lifted its head. Moonlight revealed its features. Its skin looked pale and swollen. Its eyes were wide open. But its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, like it had been screaming underwater for years. And then it began walking toward Ethan's house. Slowly, dragging wet footprints across the pavement. Because something had finally done what Daniel Cross never could. Something had crossed Black Hollow Bridge.